Hey everyone, Daniel and Chris here with the Superhero Show. Now, you've probably, if you watch the Superhero Show, you've probably seen Age of Ultron. If you haven't, you probably want to stop watching right now.
Yeah.
Because we're going to go through what you think of the movie.
Yeah, we did our spoiler show a couple of weeks ago, re-promoted it last week in line with the US release, and in that time we have had the most mail we've ever received here at the Superhero Show. It literally took me 2 hours to go through this.
We had to go out for more printer paper.
So apologies if yours doesn't get read out, but otherwise the show would last for 10 hours. So, Dan, do you want to kick off?
Yes, so first up, Ryan Pollard. While I thought Avengers Age of Ultron was tremendous fun, I felt that it could have been better. It had well choreographed action, iconic moments, and great performances, with particular standouts being Jeremy Renner, or was it really Daniel Cooper?
Nice.
Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany, but my main issue is with the pacing. Okay, it zips about all over the place faster than Quicksilver on super speed, and could have benefited from being longer to allow the characters to make much more of an impact, and would have given the story some time to breathe. Also, Tom Hiddleston's Loki was much more memorable and wittier than James Spader's Ultron, and I personally felt that Quicksilver himself was just along for the ride and nowhere near as inspired or creative as the version for Days of Future Past.
No, agreed. I don't know if this comes up here, but someone did write in, and I kind of agreed with this, that it coming out a week or two after Daredevil, it was such a contrast in spending time with the characters and watching them develop and just having to really rush through stuff.
Yeah, I find it hard to think of how the pacing could be different for that many characters.
No, I agree.
Like, to get through it all, I think is a minor miracle. I'm not saying that it's the best of the Marvel movies or a great movie, but I think it's the fact that you just get everything done.
Yeah, it does slow down, like the party scene and the farmhouse scene. But even then, because there's so many characters, everyone just gets one line, two lines.
Or someone's have to go off somewhere. Yeah.
Okay, I've got an email from Jack Kirk who says, I feel that this is the first time the Marvel Cinematic Universe felt just like that, a shared universe where all the characters exist. The party scene is a perfect example of this, with the likes of War Machine and Falcon turning up, having gone and done their own thing since their last appearances. Yeah.
And it definitely did, yeah. It's so good.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it felt like what I said last week. I felt like this wasn't aping a different genre. It felt like a comic book movie.
Yeah.
And you can do that in comic books all the time because you don't have to hire someone and give them a contract. Just draw them.
Yeah.
Not that that's easy. But you like at the end when War Machine just turns up to help out a little bit. That's great.
Yeah.
So good. Why wouldn't he?
That's fun.
Mark from Newcastle. Have to say I didn't like the second act of Age of Ultron. Fair enough. The film on the whole was alright. Not great, but alright. The development of Hawkeye and Vision were by far my favourite parts. My thought is, who is going to be the next team? We know Scarlet Witch, War Machine, Falcon, Black Widow, Captain America and Vision. I love to see Winter Soldier, Daredevil and especially Ant-Man join up for the first Infinity War. Any thoughts? That's Mark.
Yes, please, yes, please, and yes, please.
I do think this will be like the Avengers team for the first half of Infinity War, and maybe like not even the whole of that first movie for a good part of it, and then I do think Marvel will bring the money and everyone will be in that movie. At some point. I think everyone, even the Netflix people,
You got to be salivating.
there will be that shot. Like in the first movie, it was just the core team.
Yeah.
There'll be a shot where it'll pan and they'll all be standing there in space or something like absolutely bonkers.
Peter Quill, will he be there?
So look forward to that in 8 years' time.
Zach from Bolton emailed in. It's quite a long email. He's quite conflicted about Age of Ultron, but he says he kind of ends by saying, I think A of U is a better film than the first in pretty much all aspects, but it doesn't give me the fuzzy feeling Avengers 1 does. And that's not just on Marvel's fault. That's just the nature of it being a sequel and having to deal with being a major bookmark in the larger MCU as a whole.
Yeah, we touched upon it last week. Like it had to set a lot of stuff up, do some stuff. Not easy.
And it doesn't have that wow factor of being the first time.
Yeah, and I was thinking, like, because we did our spoiler discussion immediately after seeing it, and you kind of like, what will I think about in a week's time or 2 weeks? And I still think it's a better movie, but it doesn't have the wow factor of the original, which really helped lift it for you. Because when you go back to the original, it's still good, but it's not anywhere as good as it was in the cinema seeing it for the first time.
Yeah.
Ross from Hull says, while I appreciate a good laugh, who doesn't? Who doesn't, Ross? I enjoyed Age of Ultron, believing it to be better than Assemble. I do feel like it could have done with a few less jokes. They couldn't get through a single scene without throwing in a quip or a sarcastic remark, making it almost impossible to feel any tension, in my opinion.
Interesting point.
And it's a really good contrast to what we're saying about in other shows about DC and how kind of dry and you could spin that in a bad way, say it's po-faced.
Yeah.
Spin it in a positive way, say serious, adult. mature.
Yeah, it's just striking that right balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not the easiest thing to do. Graham Ritchie writes in and says, I've got to disagree about the romance of Banner and Black Widow in the first Avengers film. I think the two characters had great chemistry and that Black Widow had feelings for Banner. I think it made sense for them to have a romance, but I was thinking at one point near the end that the Hulk was going to kill Black Widow. That would have been a great reason to exile him for a Guardians of the Galaxy appearance, or a Planet Hulk, I guess. That would have been pretty awesome.
Yeah. I thought something like that might have happened, yeah.
Hulk smash Widow.
Dimitri from London. In regards to your discussion about Age of Ultron, I have to say I pretty much agree with all of your points.
Thank you.
You made about the movie. Although, in particular, the J-horror reference to Scarlet Witch, which the second time I saw it, I think they could do a bit more with that.
Yeah.
But I can't believe you didn't mention the Hulk versus Iron Man fight once.
Slight oversight.
It's probably one of the most amazing action sequences in all of the MCU movies to date.
In all of movies to date.
I think it's probably because we talked about it so much before the movie came out.
Yeah.
In trailers.
You can go with that, but we maybe should have mentioned it when we were talking about the whole film. But we talked about it a lot in the office, and maybe we just forgot.
So, yeah, it's quite an oversight.
Yeah.
Don't tell our bosses. He also says it was a bit hard adjusting to the tempo of the movie after sitting through Daredevil binge session, where all the characters in that show have much more time to develop.
That's the email I was thinking of.
There you go.
That's a very good point.
He knows what he's talking about. Also, like the Hulkbuster scene, compare that to something like a Transformers. We have no connection. Well, I don't anyway. Even though I loved Optimus Prime,
Yeah.
But you still don't have any connection.
No.
To these characters. It's not emoting while it's happening, and even though it feels like a big Michael Bay-esque sequence, like they destroy a whole building, you can follow it and there's a bit more going on.
I particularly like this email from Michael Doherty about Age of Ultron. He says, this film is simply the best film I've seen to date. It's unreal how much I love that film. My fizz moment occurred.
You're right, Chris.
My fizz moment occurred when the helicarrier turned up. 5 exclamation marks. I was like, OMG, 6 exclamation marks. And the characters were immensely epic, and the vision is so brilliant, 3 exclamation marks. OMG this film, yeah, haha. So yeah, I mean, what was your fizz moment?
Can we start using that after every film now? Every spoiler cast, we can talk about our favourite fizz moment. What was my fizz moment? Oh, the Vision and the Hammer.
Yeah.
I watched the movie again, and that is just brilliant.
Yeah, it's really funny.
If you know the comics, you know Vision as a core Avenger. If you don't know the comics, it's quite a weird thing to introduce. Quite a scary character. They're all unsure.
Yeah.
That moment, such a good.
Nailed it. And he's put to PS maybe 5 jokes.
Oh,
in reference to Batman v Superman.
He's raised us both. Jake Pemberton says, I think Ultron was both one of the best. I think the character, not the movie, was one of the best aspects and worst aspects of the movie. He was brilliantly written and Spader is great, but while his endgame and intentions were nefarious, I feel like he never did anything truly messed up or psychotic. When you have a villain who is 8 feet tall, Deathbot, who spends the entire film saying threatening things, you kind of need him to break someone's back. Sure, he cuts Claw's arm off, but he's a minor supporting character. If Hawkeye, or perhaps even Widow, considering she was a hostage at one point, had died by his hand at the mid to late stage, he would have seemed far more threatening.
I think that's a really good point.
I think it's a really acute point. Because you could have, considering what happens in the movie, you could have had him killing Quicksilver.
Yep.
And that would have really upped the ante. Really good point, Jake.
And nice use of the word Deathbot. I have an email from Tristan Shields who says, I actually thought Ultron was not that good of a villain. He just seemed like your typical I want to destroy the world type. You know them. I hate them. Even though James Spader's performance was outstanding, I'm seriously concerned about Marvel and their villains. Hopefully the Russo brothers do a good job for Thanos in Infinity War. That's one of the aspects we liked was Spader as Ultron and Ultron himself. Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting that it wasn't universally sort of welcomed.
And something the reviews are picking up, I think the Empire review touches upon this, is how Marvel are getting into the rut of having the same kind of climax and a lot of the movies, this kind of death from above. And what you could say is maybe smart about Age of Ultron is it tries to invert that by the death from above being where the Avengers actually are. Like, he's trying to create an asteroid, which I do think I kind of appreciate that plan more the second time around, that he's all bent on extinction level
Yeah.
event. He's creating an asteroid.
Yeah.
Whereas the first time I was just like
I said to you as well, because obviously I'd seen it twice, I think, when you hadn't. It's much easier to comprehend what's going on the second time.
especially with that Endgame stuff.
Yeah, it was a bit,
where you realise why that's actually happening and the mechanics of it.
Isn't brilliant filmmaking, I don't think, when you're that confused.
Yeah, because again,
Or maybe
so
we're
much
just
going on.
stupid.
I'm a bit thick. Anyway, Taylor Simpson says, I totally agree with your opinion on Scarlet Witch's mind control phase. I would have really enjoyed Iron Man seeing his childhood memories of neglect from his father. Yeah, I thought we said John Slattery was supposed to be in this movie. I thought that was confirmed. I never saw him.
Well, they've said that didn't he have a 3.5 hour cut of the film, and didn't there's going to be an extended cut, so maybe
Probably in that, then.
yeah.
And Cat maybe seeing a Nazi ruled America. That would have been awesome.
Yeah, these are good
With that
ideas.
Red Skull as president.
This is from Henry Trainer. I liked the wording of this. Quicksilver dude dies, gutted, mate. Or is he then put in that incubator thing and his cells repaired? He did not appear in the end with the new Avengers, however there was actually no mention of him at all, which if I'm not mistaken could leave the story wide open for him. That's quite interesting. There wasn't a funeral, there wasn't a lot of grieving happening, so had they left the door slightly open for him to not be dead?
Maybe not intentionally, but in comics you don't need that door.
Yeah.
The door doesn't even need to be a jar.
No.
It doesn't even need to be a door, Chris.
But I don't think he is proving to be the breakout character that he was in Days of Future Past. I mean, we interviewed the screenwriter whose name escapes me now of Days of Future Past.
Kinberg.
Simon Kinberg. I interviewed him the week before it even came out, but I'd seen it a couple of times, and he already knew that was the breakout character based on the screenings they'd had, that people loved it. And he was saying he was basically having to write more scenes for him in Apocalypse because of that. And I don't think this is having the same.
No,
reaction.
he's a supporting character, I think. Aaron Davies from New Zealand, with Robert Downey Jr. pushing 50, do you really think we'll see a slightly greying hair in future movies, or will or will he pile on the mustache dye and Rogaine? If he does these movies forever, like he says he will, when will he visibly age?
I like that this is the burning question. Out of everything we've talked about Age of Ultron, someone's really worried about his hair.
I'm worried about his hair. Now I'm worried about the mustache. I wasn't worried about the mustache, and now...
It's an important point. We genuinely don't have the answer.
If we have time with him at an interview junket in the future, maybe this is the hard-hitting question we ask.
I was looking at Robert Downey Jr.'s hair the other day on a chat show and on the telly, and I was, it's too good to be true, that hair.
Is it? Yeah. But also...
I'm just jealous, obviously.
Also, I do realise more I see him in like interviews. His wardrobe is Tony Stark's wardrobe.
Yeah.
They don't even... does he just come in?
Yeah.
At the end of the movie, he's wearing a t-shirt. It's like literally what he wears doing the press tour.
I don't like how his trousers hang. Alex Lupkin wrote in and said, you mentioned on the last show that you felt Quicksilver's death was unimportant. I agree with that for Age of Ultron. However, to Scarlet Witch is extremely important. What if it was Quicksilver that was the force in calming her down if her powers became too much? With him gone, I wouldn't be surprised if some sort of catastrophic disaster occurs because of her powers, which may lead to civil war, with either Cap or Iron Man defending her.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting
I think it's
idea.
excellent. Because they're very caring. They've grown up together.
Yeah. And you got signs of it there.
And it registered with her end. Like, she's cowering in that room with Hawkeye.
Yeah.
But once that happens, she vaporized. This is actually, I noticed this the second time. Early on, she's tearing stuff apart. But after the death of her brother and it registers, she like vaporizes stuff. Like at a molecular level, It just disappears. It's like she's incredibly powerful. And I think that's a brilliant plot point, that she's now seeded within.
Yeah.
This kind of enemy from within sort of scenario.
Yeah.
And she's a villain in the comics at some
Yep.
points. Andreas. Hey Andreas, maybe it's just me, but when you talked about the bonus stinger featuring Thanos, I felt you missed a big point. The gauntlet was last seen in Asgard. You're very right. Does this not mean Thanos has broken into Asgard and stolen the gauntlet? Did Loki let him in and give it to him?
We had a few emails making that exact point, and yes, that's true. Could Thanos have teamed up with Loki?
It was in Odin's Room of Treasures. I wonder if that's a flashback to come, maybe?
A flashback to come.
Flashback to come.
That's confusing.
Good.
Carl Barrett, friend of the show, wrote in and said, an extended cut of Age of Ultron has been announced for its home entertainment release, and I was wondering what you would want from it. I would like a bit more contextualisation to Thor's scenes, as I felt they were rushed in the theatrical version. 1 minute he's in London, the next he's by some magical pool learning about the Infinity Stones. Quite agree with you, Kyle, to be honest. that stuff did seem rushed.
Yeah, he has a couple of good lines and a couple of good moments. And he seems like the most powerful Avenger.
Yeah.
But the second time I really focused on that point in the film because I wanted to see whether it just went over my head or wasn't paying attention. It really doesn't work. Also, I noticed about that scene the second time, when they're going into the pool, there's a lot of dialogue explaining what it is, but you do not see their mouths move. So I reckon they tweet that in post.
Yeah.
I think they've lifted the dialogue from another scene, maybe on their way to this cave.
Right.
Because he's asking what this pool is, but you see in the pool when they're talking. So I think they've nipped and tucked that. So hopefully in the extended, we get a bit more context on what the hell that stuff is.
Yeah. Is there any more question marks surrounding that scene in the film, Daniel?
There is.
Good.
John Summerfield, he says, the second trailer for Age of Ultron had a part where Nick Fury says the line, "Trouble always comes around," where it cuts to a shot of a woman in a pool in a cave, very similar to the cave Thor has in his vision. She appeared to be a black woman with a shaved head and something painted on her face, leading many to believe that she has some link to Wakanda. Now, I might have missed it, but I don't recall her turning up in the final film at all. Do you think she was part of a longer plot point for Wakanda that was cut? Something entirely different? Or is Marvel implementing woman disrobing shot that does not appear in final film Easter egg in each trailer? See Gamora in the Game of Guardians of the Galaxy trailer. Game of Thrones trailer.
Yeah.
You said naked woman, and I thought Game of Thrones. Yeah. I think we both thought this, but we only actually talked about it once we saw this email.
Yeah.
Because we did a lot of the rewind theatres for Age of Ultron when it came out, and our working theory at the time that was Shuri, who is the Black Panther's sister. And while it does look similar, I think it could be a different cave in Wakanda. Maybe it's where vibranium is mined.
Yeah.
There might have been a subplot involving Claw and like how he got it out.
Yeah.
He stole it.
So to answer the previous question, I think we're going to see more Wakanda stuff in this extended cut.
Yeah.
And equally, Patrick McLean says, I agree on the Thor part of the story. It felt very much like a setup for Ragnarok when they should have just focused more on his involvement with the Avengers. So, yeah, it feels like there's a lot more Thor stuff to be seen on the cutting room floor from this one.
Definitely. Fraser McDade from Devon has written in. He sent us a really great long email, but we don't have time. We're going to focus on one very specific question, which I think is bothering both of us. How does Hulk operate a jet at the end of the movie?
So I had this written down on the spoiler show. I had a lot of negative things written down, and I realised I was being too negative, and so I didn't actually say it. But it annoyed me.
Yeah, it's because it's a bit weird because we know Banner controls the Hulk because end of the first movie. That's my secret cap. I'm always angry, so he can transform at will. But we've seen the Hulk basically be mindless. But then he's turning off screens, and then he's just hunched up.
Yes, playing his Game Boy. I mean, yeah, we need answers. I should have asked Joss Whedon that.
Imagine if next time, that's what we need to do. We need to get time and compile questions from the superhero show and ask stuff like that. Who's that woman?
Yeah.
Is he flying a jet?
I mean, do you think I was being too negative on the spoiler show, Dan?
Nah. I thought you were great.
Max Walker would disagree with you. I hate to end on a negative note, but he says, I was enjoying the superhero show for a while for its insight into all things superhero. However, the last few episodes, in particular the Age of Ultron discussion, I found myself getting really annoyed with Chris's constant whinging about the details of the film. Aside from the fact that I disagree with your comments, it just sounds like nitpicking for the sake of it. And the language joke was funny, by the way.
Good. Well...
whinging, nitpicking.
So yeah, if you want to send us emails like Max's, which is fine, or one like Fraser's.
Yep, slagging me off.
Or me. You know, it's not just about Chris, it's about me as well.
Seems to mainly be me.
You can email us anytime at superheroeshow@ign.com. And until next week, when there'll be plenty of fizz moments, stay right here on IGN.